be around the world, and thank you for joining us once again on truth2u.org. That's truth, the number 2, letter U.org. It's season 2 of Torah Pearls. I'm Jono, and joining me in the virtual Truth to You studio all the way from Ireland is Jason of spiritualbabies.net. G'day, mate.
G'day, still alive.
We're still here. We made it. How about that? Do you know, it didn't even enter my mind until today, because, of course, you know, you don't dwell on these things on Yom Kippur,
No.
but it wasn't until today, halfway through the day, and I thought, hey, big rock didn't fall out of the sky and squash us. How about that?
No, I know, we survived.
So we survived, and as we promised the listeners, if we weren't squashed by a big giant meteorite or whatever it was, we would continue on with the Torah Pearls, and here we are, promise fulfilled. Okay. And in Indonesia is the author of Let's Get Biblical, Why Doesn't Judaism Accept the Christian Messiah? Volumes 1 and 2. You can get a copy from his website, outreachjudaism.org. That's outreachjudaism.org. Welcome back to the program, Rabbi Tobias Singer.
Thank you very much. And that's why I'm in Indonesia. Many people I know ask, why? What is he doing in Indonesia? I heard there's a rock coming. I said, let me get the heck out of here and go somewhere else. There's no rocks.
That's
Here's
exactly.
just a volcano.
That's why you weren't there last week, and that's what I told everyone. You just grabbed a couple of tanks and you'd gone to the bottom of the ocean and thought you'd just wait until it was all over. But you didn't have to do that. The rock didn't fall out of the sky. Although I did read, Jason, I read back on Facebook. And the next thing that's circulating, I think, is a blood moon on the 28th. What is that? About 4 days. And apparently, I don't know what happens with the blood moons, and they come, and everyone dies somehow, and then Jesus comes again. Is that the way it goes?
Oh, man. I know that there's a couple of people, I don't want to say any names, but there's a couple of Messianic people who are feeding this
They love it.
issue. And,
But
they love it. They do.
We talked about it last week. Let's not dwell on that again this week, because this is a huge Torah portion. It's so huge that we have to jump right into it. Otherwise, it's going to go on forever. We are in Ha'azinu. This begins...
We'll run out of electricity.
Now, we'll run out of electricity. Did you get the memo, by the way, Tovia, about you and Jason doing a 2-part harmony on the Song of Moses?
I missed that memo. It got...
Because you were at the bottom of the ocean. Well, okay, maybe we won't do that. Maybe I'll just read it, and maybe we'll do that next time. But there is a tune to it, right? There are notes. Can you tell us about that before we even begin?
Well, the actually are notes all over the Torah. Mm-hmm. In fact, all over Tanakh. It all has what's called the trup, the cantillation. Oh. The reason this is called a shira, this is called a song that Moses is writing, and we are told this at the end of the previous portion of Vayishlach, that God wants it to be a song, because what we're about to encounter is not a monolithic note. Like an example would be, the 10 Commandments. It's monolithic. You have commandments. But what we have is actually sounds and harmonies and different sounds, highs and lows, and the breakup of each passage actually bounces off of each other. So that's the sounds. That's why this is called a song. And the other part we know is that, I remember as a youngster when I went to sleepaway camp, which was the high for me. It wasn't going to school. I learned the most in sleepaway camp. And for those 2 months during the summer, we would, sing all these Jewish songs, because unlike in school, in camp, you're together all Shabbat. So we would learn all these great songs which contain epic passages of Scripture. And those verses that were part of the songs that we sang, I never forgot. And therefore, this music, which incidentally evolutionary biologists concede cannot be explained if you take God out of the picture. There's no explanation of why people enjoy music. None at all. They don't know why. But the music, what it does is it sears the words in our hearts and our minds to be a testimony to the Jewish people. So that's what comes into view at the end of the parsha Vayishlach, which really introduces this, because here we are in Deuteronomy 32, but we've just come off of where God tells Moses to write this song, and it will be a witness to the Jewish people. And it's really, of course, we're going to encounter the two witnesses. The witness of heaven and earth. We'll talk about that in a moment. So that's the music. But that just to explain, there is a cantillation to all the Torah. It was part of the oral tradition of what music went where, how it was formed, and then it was put into the Masoretic text.
So let me just ask this question. The cantillation and the way that this is set out in the Hebrew, does it make it easier to learn by rote?
It's interesting because this was my bar mitzvah portion this was it. So this portion was, remembering the music is easy because it is broken down. In fact, in a Torah scroll, it's actually split in half, and you'll see as one passage. I don't know if you have a Hebrew text, you'll see it. The part A and part B bounce against each other. By the way, this is the last really Torah portion of the year that comes out on Shabbos, because the Vizos HaBrach will come out on Simchas Torah at the end of the Sukkot end of the Sukkot holiday. I want to just share one short anecdote that really will help people understand this portion as in the portions prior, because this in some ways has in it the qualities or the theme, but in his song, as we've just been this through Deuteronomy 2020. I was born 15 years after the Holocaust. So growing up in the 1960s, there were survivors around me. It was there were people with numbers on their arms. I was a no. And it was interesting that I met two kinds of people who were survivors. Some of them lost their faith completely and just wanted nothing to do with God. And they said, how could God do this? How can I believe in God after what I've seen? And then what was very powerful is that I encountered so many survivors who became more deeply religious, or it's the experience of being in the death camps and seeing things that I can't even imagine, in a sense, confirmed everything. And I wondered, how is it that you have two people in the same exact place experiencing the same thing, and they each draw a completely different conclusion. One says there's no God because how could such a thing happen? And the other one says, now I know there's a God. And the answer became crystallized for me as I was growing up. That is that if you read these portions that we are now, and it's going to come here, it's going to be really hot. The heat, there's a lot of heat here, and the heat in this music, in this song. But the key is, if we would have had a Jewish history that basically were like the people who live in the Bahamas that never had a problem in their lives, I would then question my faith. It really is the unimaginable persecution that unrelenting in every generation. So if you are familiar, if you know the song, then what you see in the Holocaust didn't shake your faith. It confirmed it, because does Judaism have mysteries? Yes, but there can't be contradictions. And what we have encountered in the last few Torah portions certainly shakes us to our core, but it also comports, matches perfectly with Jewish history, and that's what Moses is laying forth in the song. And that is the history that had not yet occurred. It's really marvelous. And we just that little introductions. So there we.
And at this point in history, we have the benefit of looking back. It begins like this: Deuteronomy chapter 32. Give ear, O heavens, and I will speak, and hear, O earth, the words of my mouth. Let my teaching drop as the rain, my speech distill as the dew, as raindrops on tender herbs, and as showers on the grass. For I proclaim the name of Yud-He-Vav-He, ascribe greatness to our God. Jason.
I just want to jump in real quick. I know Toby is probably going to have a lot just about the heaven and earth part, but we've got this issue here with not an issue, but we've got this thing here with these two witnesses. He calls heaven and earth as witnesses. And then interestingly, in the next verse, I have my lesson shall drop like rain, my saying shall flow like the dew, like a downpour on the earth, like a shower in the grass. Now we've got various different translations for those different elements of water in the atmosphere. Sometimes shower is snow, sometimes it's heavy rain, sometimes the downpour is a mist. The drop can be hitting the back of the neck or on target or gathered together. But the point is that heaven and earth are responsible for giving really the tools to Israel for survival or for eradication. These are going to be the tools that God will use to reward or punish Israel, in that the rains for the harvest will come or not come from the heaven, and the fruit that they use to survive will come or not come from the earth. Now, there's always an allusion to Torah in the text with water. Whenever we read water, especially in the Torah, we can pull something from that there's a teaching there about the Torah, and this is no different. And I love that there are different types of water here, depending on your state as someone that follows the Torah. So God says that his lessons will drop like rain. And who are they dropping on? They're dropping on the herbs and on the grass and on the world in general. Now, I would probably say I'm moss, right? If I was going to picture myself as a plant, I'm a pretty new plant to this. I'm not a piece of tall grass that needs hard rain, and I'm not a herb that needs very delicate rain. I'm more a kind of person that would need the dew. And I like this verse because it's God's offering. He's saying that the Torah comes in lots of different ways, depending on who you are and what you need. I really love that. I just thought we'd start off with that. It's a nice intro.
That's really beautiful, Jason. That's very beautiful. This is clearly echoed. The many passages here are echoed right in the book of Isaiah. And we see this exact parallel of what Jason is talking about. Wow. Where Hashem says in Isaiah 55 verse 10, for just as the rain and the snow come from heaven and do not return to heaven before it waters the earth and makes the land sprout and gives to the sower bread for those to eat, so shall my word which comes out of my mouth will not come back empty without accomplishing everything that I wish. And that's exactly what Jason says, exactly right. So you have the heaven. That's why it's a little yummy here. If you want to, I want to provoke you to jealousy. So that's why you see, if you notice, Hazinu Hashemayim V'Daberu, if I may, just the Hebrew for a moment, because it really is important. So Hazinu Hashemayim is give an ear, give ear, O heavens. It's a command. The heavens give ear. The Sishma Ha'oretz Imrei Fi, and let the land hear the words of my mouth. And that's in the passive sense. So you see there's a giver. The heaven, like Jason said, the heavens come down. And as Jason said, it's beautiful that it comes down in different ways. Isaiah also used rain and snow. No matter how it's coming down for different people, it's going to affect them. God, after all, is the great shepherd. And we see this kind of theme in Ezekiel 34. So, but you see, Jason is saying is actually in the grammar of the verse. There's a command for the heaven to give forth, to listen, to have. Ozen is an ear, which means give ear, which means listen. It's a very direct command. The Sishma Earth, it's in the passive, and let the earth hear the words of my voice, which is in the passive. That's exactly why the Torah, because what Jason's saying. But as also Jason said, the heaven and the earth, as we have seen, are also used as God's punishment. Mida connected Mida, which means the heavens could dry up, the land therefore will not receive, and so on. That's the punishment of Israel. And the key is that the heavens and the earth are witnesses, and that's why this all is so. And I call heaven and earth as witnesses, Deuteronomy 30. This is all over. This is Isaiah chapter 1, verse 2. My gosh, this is all over Scripture. This is very beautiful.
So this is the first movement, if you like. It continues in verse 4. He is the rock. His work is perfect, for all his ways are justice.
there's one thing, keep in mind, that you have here in this one verse. Remember, the name of God is called out. We have in this verse, we have 6 names of God, incidentally. That means we have a very unique, this language here is very, very special. There's some unprecedented words that are used here. But go ahead, I apologize. But here we have actually 6 names of God, which means we have that God is perfect. He is our rock. He is justice. And he is without iniquity. He is righteousness. I mean, these are all the names, and he is fair in everything he does. And that leads us to, really, if he's so fair and he's so just, how did we get into so much trouble? What's happening here is this is a spiritual astral projection of Jewish history in the future, and that's how Moses would write.
That's how beautiful the first movement is, but it changes tone very much in the second, and that is from verse 5. Jason, what does it say?
It says that destruction is his children's fault, or you might read that is corruption his? No, his children is the blemish.
Yes.
Which
good,
right. So what this is pointing to, and it's interesting because this often comes up. I'm very fond of posting the verse that says that the Lord God creates life and death and good and evil, and often there'll be a rebuke come from some quarter saying, well, how can God be the creator of evil if everything he does is righteous? But we're then projecting onto God what our idea of righteousness is. If God decides to wipe out an entire people, that's his choice. We don't get to lay our opinions and our judgments onto God and paint him in that color. And in the other way that works is that we don't then get to say that what we've done or what a people have done is somehow a reflection on what God says is right or wrong. And that's what's happening here. Is the people are kind of saying that their corruption, the bad things which are going to happen because of their actions, are somehow God's fault because he's the judge. So why didn't he let them off, or why didn't he give them better instruction? But he gave them perfect instruction. He's called the Rock 9 times in this.
What does this echo, Jason? What does this echo? A passage in the Bible where God kept his end of the covenant, but we broke our end of the covenant. There's an exact parallel of this. Jeremiah 31, that God took us out of Egypt. He was a husband to us. He was straight, but we broke our end. That's why that's a very parallel there. Like, Shiches Loi is God, is God corrupt? Loi. There's, by the way, 2 words that sound the same, homonyms. Shiches Lo, is he corrupt? Lo, he's not corrupt. Bonav Mumam, the blemishes in his children, they're the ones who messed up. God was just. He gave them blessing and everything. He told them what life is, what death is, good and evil, and they chose the wrong direction.
And so it continues in verse 6. Do you thus deal with the Lord, O foolish and unwise people? Is he not your father who purchased you? Has he not made you and established you? Remember the days of old. Consider the years of many generations. Tovia.
It's just Am Novo V'Loi Chacham. So Novo, we know that word is vile, banal. V'Loi Chacham, and not wise. You know what you said, Jono, is earlier on is very powerful. That it hit me very hard when you said in the beginning of the show that what would we have done if we were having the show 800 years ago? The amount of faith our great parents, we have the benefit, as you said, that was perfect. We have the benefit now. We see this all happening. Here we are, of stupid people. I was in Gaza right at this time of the year, just a little earlier, 10 years ago, in 2005, in August, when we went and we gave away the land. We acted like idiots, like stupid idiots. We saw the Democrats and Jews in the United States voting to lift sanctions against Iran, which will pour billions of dollars into it. They're totally in rebellion, acting like complete stupid idiots. There's no other way to explain it. You give Hamas, that's why I'm saying, John, it's we have the benefit of.
But even so,
yeah, we can look back and say, wow, that's why when I read this and I look at the pain of Jewish history, nothing that we have endured, and I'm only saying this personally, injures my faith. It strengthens it. I'm going, this is exactly what would happen to us precisely. And this is like Moses wrote this in 2 years ago.
Looking back, yeah. Right. Now I love this. Ask your father, and he will show you, your elders, and they will tell you. When the Most High divided their inheritance, now here's a verse, Tovia, oh my goodness, this is verse 8. When the Most High divided their inheritance to the nations, when he separated the sons of Adam, when he set the boundaries of the peoples according to the number of the children of Israel. Now, this is a really controversial verse. Can you tell us why?
I don't think. I don't know. It's controversial. Right, you have the 70 souls that go down to Egypt,
right?
And that's where the nation is forged. And you have the 70 nations of the world. And incidentally, Gog Magog is the gematria, the numerical gematria. It means each letter has a value. So Gog Magog, the nations that come to attack Israel, is 70. So this is like...
Yeah, sure. Like I'm with you there, but Jason knows where I'm going. Jason.
Well, I think I might know where you're going. All right, so there's one understanding of this verse that says that God allotted each nation their portion, and that there were also, because we look at the Torah, and from our perspective, we know that the Torah is a monotheistic book, but we also know that there were polytheistic people in the book, and that sometimes we read understandings of this particular verse that speak about these nations having their own gods, the sons of El, right? These sons of God, and that God takes Israel to be his people, but the other nations are under other gods. It's is that where you were going?
Yeah, that's right. And it calls into question, or some would call into question, Tovia, the Masoretic text, because the Masoretic text has sons of Israel. The Septuagint, so-called, it has angels of God, and they have a parchment, or a fragment, rather, from Cave 4 at Qumran, that claims to say sons of God. Now, it's a very, very small fragment, and some may ask, how do they even know that it's from Deuteronomy chapter 32, verse 8? But this is the debate that goes on. You must be familiar with this.
Yeah, of course. So first, it's vital people understand that in Qumran, you have a community that lasted, let's say, for 250 years, probably almost certainly the Essenes described by Josephus. They took text and then would add in commentary into the text. There are quite a few, not many, but quite a few examples. Here's one. Another one is Psalm 145, where they added in line 13. Another one is in 1 Samuel chapter 11, where some scribe added in a passage to explain a blank moment. So we do have that in Qumran, and incidentally, it should be mentioned that in Qumran, the scrolls, we only have one fragment for this, but many of the scrolls disagree with each other. I'm talking about those that are in Greek, because these were commentaries. These were what's called a dynamic commentary, and that was a style at the time. It means, just so people get this, from the style of, let's say, Rashi, which is called the systematic commentary, where you have 3 words and then an explanation. So the text is then separated from the commentary. That was not the style of commentary 2,000 years ago. 2,000 years ago, you did a dynamic translation. You produced, that means you translated it, but inserted words in order to bring out a certain point, and that's exactly what the Targums are. The Targums are not systematic. So therefore that's a non-issue for us. It seems very obvious to me, because when did the nations become separated? They became separated. What happened?
Genesis chapter 11.
Yes, and what did they do? They weren't worshiping idols. God didn't apportion them idols. Oh. What happened in Genesis 11? They wanted to. If you ask most people what did they do wrong, most people actually are not certain, and it's not their fault. The text says that they wanted wanted to make a name for themselves following the flood. So God spread them out into 70 nations. And that's where so the parallelism here is exquisite. That means the nations were divided up precisely after the flood, and the Jewish people, 70 to represent all the nations, were brought down to Egypt.
There it is. Verse 9, for the Lord's portion is his people, Jacob is the place of his inheritance. He found him in the desert land and in the wasteland, a howling wilderness. He encircled him, he instructed him. He kept him as the apple of his eye. Isn't that beautiful? As an eagle stirs up its nest, hovers over its young, spreads out its wings and takes them up, carrying them on its wings. So the Lord alone led him, and there was no foreign god with him. Right. Love that.
And now, of course, this is... as a Jew, you're listening to us go, oh man, like Hashem did all this for us, and what did we do? We so frequently turned our back. And that's what's happening here. This is building up. This is like Lahavdil, God for me. This is like Beethoven's first movement of the Ninth Symphony. There's a build-up, and then pow. So this is really torquing up the kinetic energy, because what did we do? God was protecting us at every stage of the way. He was there with us, and what did we do? And that's going to come over here.
And so it says in verse 13, he made him ride in the heights of the earth, that he might eat the produce of the fields. He made him draw honey from the rock, and oil from the flinty rock, curds from the cattle, and milk from the flocks, with fat of lambs and rams of the breed of Bashan, and goats. There you go. And goats with the choicest wheat, and you drank wine, the blood of grapes. But Yeshurun, now before we continue, Tovia, Yeshurun.
Yeshurun, this is the first time ever in the Bible that this name is used for the Jewish people. Yeshurun is actually the better Jews, and we're going to see that in the Isaiah servant songs. That's why there's a lot of... Isaiah is being inspired to use this in the Isaiah. But Yeshurun, the word Yashar means the straight ones. So actually, this is not talking about God knows Noam Chomsky, some idiot Jew. These are the good Jews who really went in the wrong direction. And this is very interesting. This is very similar to Isaiah. I mean, this is like verses just shooting all over Isaiah 42. Who is deaf? Who is deaf? Of my servant who is blind? Who said it? So the servant Yeshurun. By the way, Yeshurun is used exactly. Who is called my servant. Here's the very first place in the Bible where Israel is called Yeshurun. It's talking about the remnant. These are the good guys. These are the people, the good people who are the straight ones. Vayivot, Vayivot means he kicked. Vayivot is like there's many ways to say it, but Vayivot is like a horse or a cattle gives a kick, back, to injure whatever it's annoyed by. That's what Vayivot means. Kick back in rebellion.
Just to expand on that, it's kind of like so most people would have had who had oxes used those oxes to pull plows, right? They were used to do work for the people. And I think the picture here, as Tovia said, of cattle is an ox who's just been left to feed and it's become hugely fat. And then when you try to make that ox do his job, he's like, I'm not going to do anything for you. So he strikes out. It's really an example of if a person has everything they want, they never know what they need. And when you try to give them what they need, they're going to strike out because they have everything they want. And we see this again and again through the prophets, when the prophets tried to say to Israel, you shouldn't be getting drunk, you shouldn't be going after foreign gods. And they're like, especially the northern kingdom, oh, we're doing so well. We've got everything we need. We have strong armies. We have food. We don't need you. We don't need our God. Yeah. That's exactly what's happening here.
And this is what we talked about in last week's portion too. And this is from just in last week's portion from verse 19 of Deuteronomy 31. Now, therefore, write down this song for yourselves and teach it to the children of Israel and put it in their mouths, that this song may be a witness for me against the children of Israel. And verse 20 says, when I have brought them into the land flowing with milk and honey, which I swore to give their fathers, and they have eaten and filled themselves and grown fat, then they will turn to other gods and serve them, and they will provoke me and break my covenant. Now, what it says in verse 15 in our Torah portion this week, but Yeshurun grew fat and kicked. You grew fat, you grew thick, You are a beast, is what I've got in my translation. Then he forsook God who made him and scornfully esteemed the rock of his salvation.
Yeah, he had it good. The Jews had it good in Germany. They had a good different places. When things came good, they forgot about the God of Israel. They went to their temples and so on, but they forgot about the message. And that's exactly V'hoyim Shemoah, the center paragraph of the 3 paragraphs we read twice a day. And that is, Hisham Lecha, be careful. Once you have the rains, and this is the same thing, and you have the rains, and your grass is growing, your animals are eating, everybody. Be careful, because then you're going to turn away and worship other gods. And that's exactly what we see here. This is not if. It is the success, the financial success of Jews that turns them away. And I'll say this, I don't want, the anti-Semites are a little right. I don't know about Australia and Ireland, but I those are 2 countries I haven't been to. But, if you go to South America, Central America, you see that the Jews really are very, very wealthy and do very, very well. And then you see the spiritual slide of these communities, whether you're in Sao Paulo, in Costa Rica, in Panama, and so on. You see the slide, and it's very obvious in Mexico City. So God gives them blessing, and then they become very wealthy and fat, and then there's a kick and a turning away from faith.
There it is. It says in verse 16, they provoked him to jealousy with foreign gods, with abominations. They provoked him with anger, provoked him to anger. Now, verse 17, again, this is a very curious one. They sacrificed to demons, not to God, to gods they did not know, to new gods, new rivals that your father did not fear. Now, Jason, there's a couple of things that come to mind when we get to the word. In fact, you know what? I think, and Tavia, maybe you can confirm this. This is the first place in the Torah where, at least in my English translation, where the word demons is used, is the word
The shadim.
Shadim.
Yes.
Now, in some expressions of Judaism, there's very much a belief in demons. In others, not so much. For me, I don't believe. I just do not believe.
Well, this text actually says there aren't demons. Let me break down as I confessed, even if I was to translate, and I do proofread number of translations for publishing houses, but the text actually says here, Yizbechu lashedim. They brought the sacrifices to Shadim. Loi Elohai, that don't have any power. They have nothing. They're nothing. Elohim lo yodum. They didn't know God. Now, you could see the parallelism that this is correct, that these are all fake, that they have no power, is the passages that follow, that they're really... They're powerless, and therefore I'm going to bring upon you enemies. That's what's about to do. Who really they're not a real nation. They're all fake nations. They have no real history, and they're going to be the ones who are going to oppress you, and you're going to be under something that really ordinarily you shouldn't be. People ask, why did the Jews go silently? You see 3 Germans with a. I don't mean. I got to just use the imagery that I'm most familiar with. But I think most people are like, why didn't you go so silently? Like, what happened? Loi Elohai, they have no power. Why did you come to the true rock that is the true source of power? Those are fake rocks. They can't do anything to you.
That's right.
Can I just super quick?
Yeah.
Because I think this might be a lot to do with translation. And it's kind of like, you think that a head has got nothing to do with a tail until you hold a coin and you realize that they're both, very close. And it's just the context of the word you had confused. Now, when I read, I've got 2 translations in front of me. Both of them are Jewish, by the way. So one of these says that they sacrificed to demons who were non-gods, deities they never knew. These were new things recently arrived, which their fathers would never consider, right? That's the one I have. Mm-hmm. Now, if I remember their context that they would never consider, and then I look at my other translation down here, it says that new gods which came up of late, which your fathers dreaded not. Now, if I take the context of the fathers not considering it, and I apply that to dreaded not, then now I'm thinking that It's not that they knew them or that they didn't fear them. It's just that they didn't accept that they were actual real powers. So
They
what
rejected them, right?
What does your New King James one say again, Jono?
So in the New King James, I've got, they sacrificed to demons, not to God. To gods they did not know. But where it says to gods that they did not know, it's in italics, so it's not actually in the text.
Right. When it says that their fathers would, what's that bit there? The next bit.
That your fathers did not fear.
Right, so they didn't fear them because they knew they weren't. So if you read that as a Christian, you think the fathers didn't fear them because they were on their side, right? But when we read it from this perspective, it's that the fathers just didn't accept them as real power.
It's interesting because as Christians, and there are a lot, and g'day to all the Christians that are listening and Messianics, they need them to be true. They're like Fox Mulder in the X-Files. They want to believe because it's because demonic activity is all through the New Testament, of course, and of course Jesus casts out thousands of demons left, right, and center, and they're all over the place.
If you don't have the devil, there's absolutely no need for Jesus at all.
You're playing
soccer, most important football
character. With one team. Yeah. Playing footy with one team. Now, in if we go to another verse, if I may, just Psalm 106, verse 37, and here's just another place where this word is used, at least in my English translation. It says, they even sacrificed their sons and daughters to demons. And if I jump back to Deuteronomy again, in chapter 12, verse 31, it says, you shall not worship the Lord your God in that way, for every abomination to the Lord which he hates they have done to their, not to demons, but to their gods. For they even burn the sons and daughters in the fire to their gods. And, of course, we know there are no other gods but false gods. And so, therefore, they do not exist. And this seems to be what the Psalms is equating. Is that fair, Tovia?
Yeah. The opinion of Maimonides, and he had some opponents on this, is that these were completely fake. And there were no demons. Demons didn't exist, which the passage is clearly conveying. These are not real. No one knows who this is. And they did not cause your fathers to sarum, to become stormed by, to become shaken by, to be nothing. It meant nothing to them. And this is, it's just to weave the music here. This is bouncing off what is said earlier, which you will not find in any other religion. If you want to know the truth, ask your father. He'll tell you. Your grandfather, they will explain to you. There is no other religion that could say, look, you don't, if you want to attest to the document, go to the people, the nation, and if your fathers didn't know about it, then it's not for me, because we are a nation that passes down from nation to nation. Therefore, this is all nonsense, and therefore, we're going to see the punishment. This is a song in that there's this bouncing, there's this strong percussion that bounces off of each other. That I'm going to punish you with nothings, with things that have no value. That's the point.
We do get to that, and so it continues in 18. Of the rock who begot you, you are unmindful. You have forgotten the God who fathered you. And when the Lord saw it, he spurned them because of the provocation of his sons and daughters, and he said, I will hide my face from them. I will see what their end will be, for they are a perverse generation, children in whom is no faith. Can we define that word? Is that emunah?
Yeah, they didn't. Well, the point is that they didn't trust. That's the key point. It's not a word of believing in something based on faith, but rather it's really trusting. There was no trust in there.
Yeah, it's low imun, so it's like emunah. But low being none.
No. Low imun bum. There was no trust in them. They didn't trust. Now, everything is saying, I took you. Look, let's take the context. That's why this is music, because they all fit together. The music all goes together. I took you through the wilderness. I found you in the wilderness. I shielded you like a eagle shields her babies. Took you. I fed you. And there's also not only was I your father, but there's even the language of being your mother. Because if you notice, we had earlier, I suckled you through a rock, meaning you were drinking water from a rock, and that is a very much a parallel for a mother's breasts suckling her child. So God is saying, I was both your daddy and your mommy, and you turned your. I mean, I was I was daddy, mommy, everything. I was the source of everything. That's why I said, watch this carefully, because it's up, up, up. Look what I did for you. Bang, smash. Yeah. And what did you do? And therefore, really, I'm not going to punish you with, I'm going to bring nobodies who are going to squash you. But at the end, of course, we're going to, of course, soar high, and that's where this goes. And we'll get there, and that is that one of you will destroy 1,000.
Verse 21, they have provoked me to jealousy by what is not God. They have moved me to anger by their foolish idols, but I will provoke them to jealousy by those who are not a nation. I will move them to anger by a foolish nation. Jason.
Just have to real quick. It's only a tiny thing, but you've got meaningless idols or foolish idols. I've got meaningless acts, and sometimes you might find it says vanities. It actually means breaths, that word there. It says angering me with their vapors, with their nothingness, with their thin air. Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah, Hevel. It's actually that's a word used by Isaiah, which we actually have in our prayer. She'em mishtach lehevel v'rik. Hevel means literally emptiness, vanity, and nothingness. It's
nothingness.
Yes, yes.
Well, that really just does color it even more. Now, but you mentioned this a little earlier on, Tovia. Provoke them to jealousy by those who are not a nation. I will move them to anger by a foolish nation.
If this is not talking about, because this is really at the very end. This is messianic. This is right before the, remember, the 70 Gog and Magog. We're now going to have accuracy on end of days. And we have the chief oppressors of the Jewish people who call themselves a nation, but are really not a nation. They have no history. They're a fake nation. It is similar also, incidentally, to fake Jews. When the Jewish, because I don't want to go too detailed, but the Jews were spread out twice, and it's alluded to in these texts. So there's two fake nations. The first fake nation are these fake Jews, namely the Samaritans, who converted for all the wrong reasons and became the biggest problems that could be. And most people don't realize, unless you're a historian, you don't realize how, or you read the Bible, how much of a problem the Samaritans. They were the chief enemies of the Jews who did not belong in the land of Israel, came from a foreign nation, and what we're dealing with today, the PLO. You have Yasser Arafat, one of the founders of the PLO, was born in Cairo. I mean, he faked his birthplace. So that, I mean, look, obviously, we have, like you said when you said this, it went through me, Jono, because it's exactly, we can now see things that no one can see except for the God of Israel, and that is, we are persecuted by people saying this is our land, this is our heritage, it's an occupation. Jerusalem, Jews are occupying Jerusalem. Are you insane? In 1906, the Jews were by far the majority. What nation are you? Where is your Palestinian flag? It's exactly what we're seeing before our eyes today. To me, it's like, pow.
It's amazing. For a fire is kindled in my anger and shall burn to the... Now, I've got, Jason, get this. And it shall burn to the lowest hell. What do you have?
Oh, wow.
In 22.
Lowest depths in one, and then the other one I've got open. Into the depths of the netherworld.
Whoa! Okay, Toby, what's going on in the Hebrew here?
Yes, Vatikad ad sheol tachtis, which means tachtis means low down, and sheol means like lower grave, the lowest place.
So we've got sheol. Isn't that interesting that they decided to put and shall burn to the lowest hell, and it shall consume the earth with her increase and set fire. Oh, there you go, because you have to connect it with the fire in a Christian translation. And set on fire the foundations of the mountains. I will heap disaster on them. I will spend my arrows on them. They shall be wasted with hunger, devoured by pestilence and bitter destruction. I will also send against them the teeth of beasts with the poison of serpents.
Now, this, just so you know, there's a switch that happened here. And that is, this is switching now to the enemies of the Jewish people. This is a theme, because there's a shift happened here. But and the shift is very much like you see in Zechariah chapter 1 as an example many times. That means, yes, God used the nations of the world to punish the children of Israel, but lest they think they're going to get away with it, God is going to destroy them. We see this in Isaiah 54, that ultimately the person who forms the weapons, who is the ironsmith, is going to be destroyed. We see in Zechariah chapter 1, the very famous thing that, I was angry with my people, but you helped to do harm. Very famous, and therefore therefore what we have here is just know that that all these nations that God did use to persecute the Jews, they're not walking away from this. They're going to get it. They're going to be destroyed. So,
25. The sword shall destroy outside. There shall be terror within. And isn't there? For the young man and virgin, the nursing child with the man of gray hairs, I would have said, I will dash them into pieces. I will make the memory of them to cease from among men. Had I not feared the wrath...
This is moving back, but go ahead.
Had I not feared the wrath of the enemy, lest their adversaries should misunderstand, lest they should say, our hand is high, and it is not the Lord who has done all this. What is this?
Okay,
Verse 27.
So
what
I need to break this all up. So now God is switching back. This is the many passages, obviously the end of Leviticus 26. God's saying, look, I really should have wiped the Jews out. It means but I can't break my promise. Here we have another, what Moses said in a defense of the Jews, which was hard to defend. We talked about this with the golden calf, and that is, God is explaining why he didn't utterly destroy the Jewish people. This is one of the reasons we find this all over Scripture, and that is that it would have been a desecration of God's name. Because if let's say the Arabs would have destroyed us in any one of these wars, they would not have said the reason why Israel lost the war is because God is punishing them because they didn't keep Shabbos, because they didn't feed the thing. They're going to say, you know why the Jews suffered so much? Because because we're so powerful and we defeated them. And so, as Hamas said, start digging your graves. Whether the word Hamas is mentioned here, anyways, start digging your graves. We're going to bury you if you come into Gaza and so on. So the Torah is saying, God is saying here, He can never allow the Jewish people to ever be destroyed, because then His name will be reviled, because the enemies are not going to go. Now, we have to explain why it's important to God what people say. Is God so sensitive? I don't want people to say bad things about me. That's a separate question, but I need to divide those 2 points. But what it's saying here is, I cannot let it be that the nation should say, this echoes with Moses. Moses saying, if you destroyed the Jewish people here because of the gold calf, the world's going to say, the Egyptians are going to say, you brought them out to the wilderness to destroy them. Now the question, of course, is why would God be so concerned about what people think? Is God so sensitive and they're going to say bad things about me, I'm not going to get a good thing? So the answer is, of course, is that the whole purpose of the world was created is that man will be able to reach God, man will be able to encounter the Almighty, and the only way that can happen is that God's name is raised up, and then the nations will come to know about the God of Israel. That's the only thing. If that doesn't happen, then this whole thing is purposeless. The whole point is that earth and heaven should touch each other, that man should recognize God. And therefore the Jewish people, of course, are preserved, because ultimately the Jews are going to convey that message of being a light to the nations. But they struggle all the way through.
So it says in 28, for they are a nation void of counsel, nor is there any understanding in them.
Right, they have no way to be able to analyze what just happened. I apologize, I interrupted you.
You're right, but it continues on.
They don't understand.
They don't understand. It says, that they were wise, that they would understand this, that they would consider their letter end. How could one chase 1,000 and two put 10,000 to flight unless their rock had sold them and the Lord had surrendered them?
Right.
For their rock is not like our rock. Now we're back to Israel. Okay. For their rock is not like our rock, even our enemies themselves being judges. For their vine is the vine of Sodom, and their fields of Gomorrah. The grapes are the grapes of gall. Their clusters are bitter, and their wine is the poison of serpents, the cruel venom of cobras. Verse 34. Is this not laid up in store with me, sealed among my treasures? Vengeance is mine, and recompense their foot shall slip in due time, for the day of their calamity is at hand, and these things to come hasten upon them.
Yeah, did you really think you were going to get away with this? You think you can hide your sins from me? This goes into that kind of hidden sin.
Right.
And it's the hidden sin that's all over Isaiah, it's all over Jeremiah. People who are praying, keeping the new moons, they are fasting on Yom Kippur, and so this is all over. But secretly, it's all deeply damaged.
And this is where it begins to change. Verse 36: For the Lord will judge his people and have compassion on his servants when he sees that their power is gone and there is no one remaining, bond or free. He will say, "Where are their gods? The rock in which they sought refuge, who ate the fat of their sacrifices and drank the wine of their drink offerings. Let them rise and help you and be your refuge." Now, that's really saying, those of you who are left that put your faith in other gods, where are they now? That's what it's saying, right?
There's nothing that, what will happen is that these people, what happened to them? It's all gone. It's all nothing. It's emptiness.
And here is such a golden verse. Now see that I, even I, am he, and there is no God with me.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
I stood up at Duke University maybe 15 years ago, and I said to the students, I actually talk about it in my lecture on the Trinity. I said to them, if you were God, and you were writing I was speaking actually to the divinity school, it was the Methodist divinity school. And if you were God and you wanted to forever ensure that no one would ever believe in the Trinity, what would you put in there? So they said, I'm the only one, there's no one else besides me. That's exactly, what a statement. And this is the lie. This is the lie that is advanced by Leave It to Jews for Jesus. If the Southern Baptists didn't have the Messianics around them, they would never do this kind of garbage. I think they have more brains than this. But they say, Maimonides changed the word. It says echad, and he made it yachid. Well, he's not saying he's quoting Deuteronomy 6. That's exactly what it's saying. There's no one else besides me. I'm alone. It's me. No one could take from my hand. No one. I am the healer. I am the only one. There is nothing besides me. I am the only source of power. Ein Elohim imadi. That's very important. Ein Elohim imadi, which means there is no power or no God with me. Nothing. There is no other person.
For I raise my hand to heaven and say, as I live forever, when I whet my glittered sword and take my hand, and my hand takes hold on judgment, I will render vengeance to my enemies and repay those who hate me. I will make my arrows drunk with blood, and my sword shall devour flesh with the blood of the slain and the captives from the heads of the leaders of the enemy. Wow. Now, here we are knocking on
I'm just going to say Isaiah 49, 16, and I'm not going to say anything. Well, we don't have to go there. For those of you who see that God is raising his hands to all the nations of the world, he inscribes Israel's names on his palms. But continue. Go ahead.
Here's another very curious verse, Tovia. It says, this is Deuteronomy 32:43. Rejoice, O nations, with his people, for he will avenge the blood of his servants and render vengeance to his adversaries. He will provide atonement for his land and his people. Now, just the first line.
This is end times. This is, of course, end times. This is all messianic. I mean, what's going to happen is finally when the ultimate redemption happens, the key of why Jeremiah and Isaiah says that the Exodus will not, no one even talk about the Exodus in the Messianic age. It's not that the third temple is so glorious, but because the world will be redeemed. When that occurs, the nations are going to see. And this is what Isaiah 53 is, the confessions of the nations. They're going to. That's why this is all the servant songs. Isaiah has two drips going on in each arm as he's writing all the servant songs. That when this takes place, then the world will see that Israel is completely redeemed, restored to its complete glory, and they'll see that those who are the enemies of Israel will be completely destroyed. And then the nations, those who survive, what will they do? They're going to praise Hashem, praise his people. This is
it's beautiful, but this is one of those curious verses. Rejoice, O nations, with his people. Now, it's argued that there's a Dead Sea Scroll fragment that adds, let all the gods or angels worship him. And this goes back to what you were saying earlier, Tovia. Also, the Greek translations that concur, of course, with what Hebrews chapter 1 verse 6 says, and of course it does because Paul only quotes from the Greek, and Hebrews 6:1 says, let all the angels of God worship him. But what we have in the Masoretic text, what we have in the Hebrew is, let all the nations rejoice, O nations, with his people.
Well, I've got a couple of different things going on. I've got some that say, let the tribes of his nation sing praise. But more, the one I'm kind of leaning towards is, sing aloud, all you nations of his people. So the nations have, as Toby said, have seen what's happened to Israel, and they're singing, praising God for what's happened to Israel. I like to think that these are the nations that have said, we're on Israel's side, right? They've signed up.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
This is Zechariah 13, verse 9, and 10, I mean, 8 and 9. That's exactly what's happening here. By the way, one thing, just of people should know, people use the word Septuagint, but that word is genericized. The actual real Septuagint, nobody has it. If you do happen to have one, you're a billionaire. No one has it. Was destroyed. What happened subsequently is that, just like now we say, could you Xerox this? Pass me a Kleenex. Any Greek translation, and there are hundreds of them created, would be called the name Septuagint. This is not the original Septuagint.
Not the Septuagint.
That's a very important thing. No one has Septuagint. If they do, they should immediately go to Christie's and have it sold because no one does. It burned down in a fire.
Now, here's another curious verse, Toby. It says, now the song is finished, but the portion continues on. It says, so Moses came with Hoshea bin Nun. Now, why is he all of a sudden Hoshea?
Right. So just to explain is that Moses previously had already added a letter to Hoshea's name, making Yehoshua. And in fact, we see the name Yehoshua. We're incidentally going back to Numbers chapter 13. I think it's verse 16 or 17. But that was done in private. And that's the difference. The people, this is a speech before the entire nation. And we're going to see in a moment that Moses is now going to go to die in the middle of the day in front of everyone, and the nation's almost try to stop this. But the nation doesn't know about this new name. They wouldn't be able to identify it. So it's very important to Moses to convey to now a massive audience, not just his elders that he anointed, that, look, this is the person, he is the one. And Yehoshua, or Hoshea as he's called here, because it's in such a public event, Yehoshua is going to be enormously successful to the point, I'll say this, that it always struck me, and the Bible says this, that basically during the days of Joshua lived to be 110 years old, the Jews were pretty much always faithful. We see in the book of Joshua some problem here and there, but it says it in Judges 2, verse 7. It says explicitly that during Joshua's lifetime, the Jewish people were with God. And make no mistake about that. Joshua was completely umbilically connected to Moses, but he was just an extraordinary person. The people connected to him, followed him as they did Moses, but they really didn't rebel against him very much at all. He was, when he spoke, you don't have the fighting back as they did with Moses. So therefore, the nation had to know. This was clear. Moses is about to die. They had to know, this is who we're talking about. Here he is. He's next to me. You know him as Hoshea ben Nun. And that's why here he's called Hoshea ben Nun. A little earlier on, where it's a narrative, he's called Yehoshua, the name that Moses gave him.
Yeah, I don't know if Tovia mentioned the verse, but if you look at Numbers 13, 16, if he did, then cut this out. But if he didn't, sometimes my brain is trying to catch up with everything Tovia says so I can understand. Numbers 13, 16 literally says, these are the names of the men Moses sent in to explore the land. Moses gave Hoshea, son of Nun, a new name, Yeshua. That's the commentary on the end of that.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you for that. Moses finished speaking all these words to Israel, and he said to them, set your hearts on all the words which I testify among you today, which you shall command your children to be careful to observe all the words of this law, for it is not a futile thing for you, because it is your life. And by this word you shall prolong your days in the land which you cross over the Jordan to possess. I love it whenever it says that, because we read only, Torah portion ago, where God says that he is your life, O Israel. And here, again, it also says in regards to the commandments, it is your life by which you will prolong your days in the land. Then it says...
Can I take a second on that just quickly?
Please.
Right, so it's not a futile thing in that it's not an easy or a simple thing. It's not something you can just shrug off. And so I had a conversation with someone recently that said, what did they say? They said a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, referring to a conversation we were having about looking up simply, if you've got no understanding of Hebrew, you can go and have a look at what the Hebrew word is, see how that's used everywhere else, and then have a look at how it's used in your verse and see if contextually it's the same. Something simple like that, baby steps. And the argument was a little knowledge is a dangerous thing. But we're told in the text, and I find it kind of interesting, that the Torah isn't hard, right? That it's not something we have to reach out for. We don't have to get anyone to get it for us. It's something we can hear and understand. That God doesn't speak in code. That there's no great mystery to be unraveled before you can understand it. And I mean, we're entering the Shemitah year. Every 7 years, the Torah would have been read to the congregation, regardless of their age and their station. Right? Anyone that lived within the boundaries of Israel would hear and understand that Torah. They wouldn't be there going, "What did he mean?" I mean, they'd know, right? You keep the Shabbat. You don't eat this. You do eat that. You look after your, it's simple. But in this verse, it says that it's not this simple thing to shrug off. And I just wanted to emphasize that what it's saying is not that it's a difficult thing to do, but it's an important thing to do. It's not like remembering to keep, to lock your door when you leave your house. It's remembering the importance of having a lock. And I just wanted to make sure that people didn't think that, although it says it's not a futile thing, that it's a super difficult thing to do. It's not difficult. It's just important. And it's important to draw that boundary between the two things.
Excellent. Thank you. Then the Lord spoke to Moses that very same day, saying, "Go up this mountain, the Abarim, Mount Nebo, right? And Mount Nebo, which is in the land of Moab, across from Jericho. View the land of Canaan, which I give to the children of Israel as a possession." It's so hard. "And die on the mountain which you ascend, and be gathered to your people, just as Aaron your brother died on Mount Hor, and was gathered to his people, because you transgressed against me among the children of Israel at the waters of Meribah Kadesh in the wilderness of Sin, because you did not hallow me in the midst of the children of Israel, yet you shall see the land before you, though you shall not go there into the land which I am giving to the children of Israel." I tell you, Tovia, it really just does end on such a low note. I mean, are we to be happy for Moses that he can at least see the land before he passes on? Well, it just really does leave it on a low note for me.
Well, you see that Moses knew this was all happening, and you can see the strength in Moses' voice, and that, after he tried to go into the land of Israel, not because he just wanted to see Tel Aviv, but he wanted to go to perform the mitzvot there. But the key was that the nation has to be successful. And this goes back to what we discussed a few times earlier, and that is that there were opportunities where Moses could have his leadership could have been greater, and God's name could have been praised. And that means that the nation could have been more successful. As it turns out, the famous passage in Judges, after recalling Joshua's life, is Joshua was an enormously successful leader. Joshua is really quite a perfected individual.
That is the way, nevertheless, our Torah portion ends, and it's as if we're done with Moses, but in fact we're not. The next time we get together in our final Torah portion, we do have the blessing, Moses' final blessing on Israel, and that is fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. We'll be getting to that. Now, just explain again, Tovia, when is this read, this final...
This is read on Simchas Torah. This is read on the 8th, in exile. It's in diaspora. It's read on the 8th day of Sukkot. I mean, it's the end of Sukkot. At the end of Sukkot, on the 8th day.
And that's when we'll be getting back together. Jason, final thoughts?
I just want to remind everyone that we're in Israel in 5 weeks.
5 weeks?
And that if you're not coming with us, we're going to be setting some things up in place where you can kind of, because I mean, I'm going to kind of photograph and record as much as is possible. John's going to be recording a lot of the audio. Most of that is going to become available when we get back, but daily I will be making updates. So find me on Facebook, because I will, in the next couple of weeks, I'll be issuing Tumblr accounts and other accounts where some audio and photography and video will be getting uploaded while we're away. Right. So I'm setting that up now, so it's ready to go. I don't want to have to rush in the last week. So if you want to sign up to see what we're getting up to and to hear what we're hearing and see what we're seeing, then come and find me on Facebook now.
I will put a link on this post. Thank you, Jason, Spiritual Babies of spiritualbabies.net, Rabbi Tovia Singer of outreachjudaism.org, where you can get a copy of Let's Get Biblical, Why Doesn't Judaism Accept the Christian Messiah, Volumes 1 and 2. And don't forget, of course, tobiasinger.tv, where you can find all of his videos on one site, tobiasinger.tv. Thank you, my friends. And until next time, dear listeners, be blessed, be set apart by the truth of our Father's Word. Shalom.